My name is Enrico Zamarilla, and I am indeed a paranormal investigator, back on the hunt to finding spirits! Currently, whilst vacationing here in Florida, I was going through some old paperwork in my grandpapa's new cabinets, and I found this. Hell's Gulf, the book, told in descriptive detail about the terrible things that happen in Florida's residents. Hell's Gulf is a place of death, anguish, murder, fear. But most importantly, it possesses the demonic forces that I search for to complete my investigation.
For me, finding this place is everything. Because, well, obviously, there's so much to investigate. Spirits galore, I guarantee. They're probably everywhere in Hell's Gulf. But, who knows? Maybe I might find more than just spirits. Maybe I might find proof of, I don't know. Nothing's really better than spirits, now that I think about it. But hey, at least the landscape still looks beautiful here in Florida. I thought it would be a good idea to come visit Grandpapa. And it was. If you were wondering why I'm wearing a backwards hat today, different from my beanie, well, needless to say, I need a disguise. I'm going to be going into the mall. Yes, the mall. Because I need to know information about Hell's Gulf. Recently, I've been reading books, per se. And one book I remember reading about is Hell's Gulf. Obviously, Nick Carlson, with the guy. Never got to meet him, but it is what it is. Maybe he will show me the way to finding paranormal randomies. Look at that. The lake out there. Damn, I really wish I had a boat. I'd be out there in a second. Heartbeat getting me somewhere. Right. Head down. Shit. The greatest place to investigate is the mall. Surely somebody will have answers regarding the spirits in Hell's Gulf. Because if they don't, I don't know what I'm going to do. I found no information online. I've checked everywhere. And yet I still find shit. But here, I will surely find some answers from somebody walking by. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe I'll even pay. What the fuck was that? Random ass bug. You saw that shit? I hope I got that shit because that shit was so weird. Alright, in I go.
My hunt for Hell's Gulf's location has begun with the mall. Florida's residents here have all seemed to be a little bit on the downer side when it comes to the topic. But I will find out information on the location of where Hell's Gulf is, and I will find me my spirits.
The palm trees are swinging and the mall is very big. For me, this is nothing unusual. For me, this is typical. I have never been able to find anything paranormal in the previous few days. But I will be continuing the investigation, as usual. Sometimes you run out of things to say, you know? When you're making a full documentary, it gets hard, it gets difficult. But I will find spirits. Years ago, they closed this place down. I always wondered why, but it's clear that from the electrical components, things went astray. I mean, caution is in effect. Blocked off. Interesting. The mysteries of what could be upstairs are very intriguing. I must do some further researching for that. Does anybody know where Hell's Golf is? Where is everybody? Come on, I just want to know information on where Hell's Golf is. Can't find this place. Dare they close down the ice cream shop when it's fucking 80 degrees? Blasphemy. Hell's Golf. Anybody know where Hell's Golf is? Anybody at all? Why is all this place closed down? Anybody? Anybody know? Where is everybody? Oh, there's somebody. Ma'am, did you know where Hell's Golf is? Okay, that lady had some problems. Next time, I'm gonna make sure that... Oh shit. Oh shit, she is. She is. Gotta be careful here. Things can't just be approaching random people, they might be possessed for all I know. What is this storage room? They hiding something like, oh shit, there's somebody there. This mall has more secrets than Hell's Golf. Ooh. Gotta be careful now. Can't be spotted. Investigation has gone south. No information regarding Hell's Golf. But I do know one place I can check. It's a good day to get a nice massage. It's the best time to take this vacation, not for granted, but to enjoy it. Oh, yeah, that's the spot right there. Give me that. Ah! Machine does wonders. This camera angle, not so much, but hey, what are you going to do? When you're on vacation, you want to enjoy yourself. And for me, writing stories and finding spirits is the best way that I do. Already?
Please come again.
Your minute is up already?
Sucks.
Hours of searching through the mall and still nothing of notice. It appears that the mall and the residents in it don't seem to care or even know about Hell's Golf. Or perhaps maybe they are hiding secrets of their own that if ever came out, Hell's Golf will be responsible for.
For me, on a personal level, the mall seems to have a lot more mysteries than I expected. Quite honestly, Hell's Golf is looking less interesting when you have cautionary things to look out for. I wonder if these machines still work. Cruise them all. Take a $5. Probably doesn't work. No, didn't think so. JCPenney's always seems to have the answers. And mall management, right next door. That's perfect, isn't it? For me. Where do you think would be the best place to go after this vacation? Because obviously Hell's Golf seems to be a dad. But for me, I have the best story to tell being the best paranormal investigator and having all of this stuff to present is the greatest accomplishment that I could ever achieve. And once I capture the spirits, wherever they are, I will be the man. But for now, I think this is a good time to wrap up. I will let you know if there's anything left to find. Take care of yourselves. I promise you, I will be the best there is.
My journey ends in disappointment. I have failed to locate Heller's Gulf, and subsequently I have also failed to find spirits. Now that I've returned home, however, it seems that hope is still in the air, and I'm going to keep my spirits high. No pun intended, but I just may have found my next investigation in the woods to find the legendary Michael Myers. How you doing? Today I'm reviewing a book. And I know what you're thinking. You're reviewing a book? Yeah, I'm reviewing a book. Because I can. You know, you try doing different things around here. You know, I'm not usually a book person. I don't usually read books in general. Mainly because I get bored very quickly. And I really only check out books that I'm actually very interested in. Or, you know, have something to do with a franchise that I know that I want to know more about. But this is one of the first times, if not the first time, that I've actually read a book completely blind, without anything, without even knowing shit, pretty much. And that book, Hell's Gulf, and it's by Nick Carlson. If you don't know who Nick Carlson is, he's a YouTuber that just came on the scene, I believe last year, that started to post a lot of Outlast and FNAF content. He's most notable for his FNAF video called Reimagining Security Breach, where he had a little controversy because his interpretation of Security Breach divided the fans because he had the graphic content of horror, you know, like horror has. It never, you know, something about me personally, I never understand why people don't like horror for horror. You know, it's horror. What do you expect horror to be? Funny? I never get that. It's like, how are you gonna complain about horror yet you still watch horror? But besides that fact, I decided to give this creator a little bit of shine. And the reason I decided to give him a little bit of shine is because he's an upcoming new writer. And I like to give creators a little bit more credit for their actual work than just their content on YouTube. Because the thing about creators, right, is that most creators, when they create content, they're not really creating content for fun. Sometimes they're just doing it for either money, or they're trying to sway you of, hey, if you think this edit and shit is cool, then you should check me out. Check out my socials and all that. You know, they're trying to lead you to somewhere else, essentially. And that's where you get the kind of different content. And that's where you get the different type of content creators of, like, some content creators stick with only one thing that they know and love, and they just make videos just about that one thing and everything around it. And then you have other creators that do a bunch of different things, that branch out to different types of stuff to see what's interesting, what's new, what's hot, what's not hot, and see if they can upscale something or check it out, because it normally gets swept under the rug. But for me, I don't really make videos for views. I don't make videos for any type of attention or social or any type of shit like that. I really just do it for fun because I like to. I mean, genuinely, at least, you know, in the long run, it does benefit me. But because obviously when you have a bigger audience and the audience grows, then you have more people to be like, hey, if you're ever interested in checking this out, go ahead, check this out. But I was always going to do my stuff regardless if I had an audience or not. But this is not about me. This is about Nick Carlson, because I think that Nick Carlson, I believe he's actually one of only a few YouTubers that I'm genuinely subscribed to, because I'm genuinely interested in his content. I actually think his content is pretty interesting and funny, and I think that for an upcoming writer, he has a lot of potential in what he can do if given good material, if he could come up with great material in general. And so I decided to check out his book and see how well it stood. And give it a little review, give it a little rating, because most people, when it comes to books especially, nobody's reading that shit, nobody's checking that shit out unless it's like Five Nights at Freddy's, which, God, don't read the FNAF books, they're terrible. So what exactly is Hell's Gulf, and what the fuck is it about? To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know if there's a very great way to describe this book. The best thing that I could describe with this book is probably the basics, in that you have this 20-year-old college kid who goes to visit his family on a vacation in Hell's Gulf. And then from there, chaos ensues. That's all, genuinely what I can tell you, because this is definitely a book to where you gotta read it blind just to understand how strange things get, because this is a story where the first third of this story starts off relatively very grounded. It's a very slow burner, a very melodic kind of pacing. Then you get to the second third where things start to get ramped up, but you're still kind of questioning to yourself, like, what the hell is really like going on, because you still don't really know what the story is about by the second third of the story. Then you get to the last third of the book, and that's where things kind of just shoot darts at the wall, all types of crazy shit, over the top theatrics, a bunch of weird stuff that I could never describe to you off of just a whim. You would definitely need to read it to know the context, to understand it. And something I will say that I genuinely do enjoy about the aspects of Hell's Gulf is that the fact of what is actually going on in this book and what is going on with Hell's Gulf is somewhat very relative, and uses the wording of Hell's Gulf in and of itself to manifest a metaphorical, literal interpretation of Hell's Gulf. That's really the best way I can describe it without giving anything away, because this is, like I said, this is definitely a story to where you need to read it to truly understand how strange things kind of get just randomly off a whim. Because things, like I said, things start off very slow, but then it's like things kind of just zoomed past you on a highway when you get halfway through the book. And whilst I really do enjoy the concepts of what he attempts to explore here, I think that the problems that I have in regards to the story is mostly execution, because like I said, if you're just reading this for the first time without knowing anything, what starts to happen kind of just hits you in the face, and you're just supposed to go along with it. Like, there's a point in this book in the third act to where a character finds something, and then once that character finds something, it tosses a lot of information at you, to where if you are not in the right mentality reading this book, or not truly understanding up to this point what the book is about, you're definitely not going to understand anything when this part happens, because it really does a bit of a poor job telegraphing to you this exact moment in time to truly understanding. Like, I do understand that there is foreshadowing earlier in the book to this, but the foreshadowing felt almost like you tossed in a little thing that is like, oh, that's strange, but the meaning of it was a lot deeper than it actually seemed on the surface. But when it actually comes into fruition, it almost feels like it just comes out of nowhere. It almost seems like a stretch and a reach of an explanation that kind of just ramped up, especially in the third act, which kind of really fell for me, because it felt like a third act to where, if you've ever seen like a horror movie that starts off very grounded and very slow and melodic with a lot of the things going on, and then all of a sudden you're like in the final 20 minutes of the movie and they just decide to like do a bunch of crazy shit now, and you're just supposed to like turn off your brain of logic. That's kind of what happens in this book, and I didn't really enjoy it all that much because it didn't really flow well. The waves didn't really flow naturally for me to truly understand, and I get that's the point That's kind of the point, is that it's supposed to be weird, it's supposed to be unnatural. But I still kind of wish that there was a way to have managed to foreshadow that and telegraph that and build it up even better to make that execution like this epic, awesome thing. Because when I tell you that this one thing that happens in the third act truly just happens out of nowhere, it truly happens out of nowhere. To where the only time you ever get reference to this thing in particular is one character just kind of mentions it nonchalantly, saying like, oh yeah, my brother, yeah, he ain't never wanted to go down that pathway because it's kind of he always got a weird feeling going that way. And that's all you get in regards to this thing here. And that thing ends up becoming a vital piece of the story, to where I kind of wished and wondered if you would have put more emphasis on that thing to make it feel even more special when you got there. It would have made a lot more sense. And it would have not only made a lot more sense on first read, but it would have also made for a much better read in general. It's kind of like when a movie has like an item, like let's say if you, I forgot what the term is called, somebody can give me the term, but it's like when a movie has a shot of people and then all of a sudden it has like this 3-second shot of this handgun on a table, and you're focusing really hard on the handgun, and then it cuts away as if the handgun wasn't important, but obviously it comes back later because you were supposed to pay attention to the gun because obviously it's going to come back later. It's kind of like that, but the problem is that this is a book and not a movie, and when you're telling it in a book form and not a movie, it's a lot more difficult to telegraph it, to where when things start to happen, your imagination has a hard time putting together what exactly is happening. Like, you're reading it, but the descriptions of what is happening is kind of like happening so quickly that you just kind of may have missed something. Like, if you kind of skimmed over a page because you were thinking nonchalantly, you might have missed something very important. To where I was reading the book at the start, when I was first reading this book, I had a mentality where I was kind of like joking around, and I was just messing around reading through the book. I was narrating, doing all this crazy shit that I usually do. But by the time I got around to the second and third act, it's like I had to change my mentality entirely to just be able to realize of what is actually happening and be able to understand in full of what is happening. And I wish that there was a way for that execution to have been able to tell that better. However, one thing I can praise in regards to the story is that the story truly does not hold back on the horror, which is something that I kind of knew going into this, because seeing the type of videos Nick Carlson makes, especially that reinterpretation of Security Breach, I had a feeling that I knew that he would not hold back in regards to what is said or what is done in his book. And it definitely doesn't hold back, to the point where I didn't think a lot of these things were problematic, because, you know me, I don't fucking care. I don't care. I read things and, I'm more interested in story and characters. But to other people, when I saw a review, somebody else's review, when another person read through the book, one of their complaints was that the book had a lot of words that kind of got under their skin, or there was a lot of scenes that may have rubbed them the wrong way. And for one, I say that it's a horror book. If you're going to read a horror book, especially one for adults and one for mature audiences, you gotta expect the craziest of shit. You gotta expect the darkest of things to happen. Horror books will go as far as horror can be. Horror is fear. Fear is horror, and fear can be interpreted in many ways. But I also wanted to point it out because modern times and people in the modern times, they don't like a lot of things. Especially a lot of things in this book, to where for me, when I read them, it'll go past me like I don't care. But when other people read them, they'll stop and they'll probably be like, what the fuck is this? Why did you say that word? Or why did you do this? And it gets annoying. It gets really annoying, and it makes me wonder why people like that read books like this in the first place. But despite that fact, I think that the concepts in general and all the dark themes, I'm really grateful over the fact that he goes there and he does not hold back
on those concepts, on those themes, albeit I wish there were ways that he could have done it in a more frightening way. Because one thing I have to admit while reading this book is that I wasn't truly feeling the fear of the book. I was not truly afraid of what was going to happen. There were times where I was excited and I was ready to see what was going to happen, but there was never a point in the time where I was afraid of what was going to happen, because in a way the story planned out the ending from the start, to where as soon as you start the book and you read like the first few pages, you already know how the book's going to end. And a lot of the twists and turns that happen in this book are telegraphed from a mile away. Like, the first time you'll see these characters, or the first few times that you start to interact with these characters, you already know that these characters in particular are the problems or have something going on. And that kind of brings me to another thing that I kind of had a conflict with in this book, is characters. To where I did not really enjoy a lot of the characters. I was not really invested in a lot of these characters, especially the main character, Rowan. Rowan kind of feels like that cliche guy in any horror movie, to where he'll start off at the worst spot imaginable, and he has to find himself, and he's miserable, and then over time he has to learn to appreciate family. And I wish, like I said, if the execution was better, because at the end of the day everything's about execution. If the execution was better, there's a way to have made Rowan look like a fucking awesome badass. But then the ending happens, and there's a point in the story where I thought it should have stopped right then and there, but there's like 2 or 3 extra pages on Sunday. I'll call it Sunday. And this Sunday section almost felt like it defeated the whole book to begin with, and kind of tossed everything that we earned and tossed everything that we've accomplished away entirely. And to the point where both endings kind of felt lackluster. I wish that the Sunday part of both endings genuinely didn't happen, and we kind of continued from before Sunday and saw how that interaction between the characters happened. Because something that happens with Rowan's character, which I'm not going to say, truly made the story feel pointless, because the story gave you a motive. It gave you a purpose of what the character should accomplish by the end of the book. But even though the character does one of those things, it doesn't feel like a fully accomplished win. It almost feels like the character was kind of stripped away of that true capability of meeting his end goal, and you don't really get to fully enjoy that ending at all, which really sucks, because I would have loved to have either explored more before Sunday, to where you get to see that development between Rowan and certain other characters, or I would have loved to see an extension of the alternate ending, because something that I did appreciate was that there was an alternate ending, and that the alternate ending provided a different path, a different route, to where I kind of wish we saw more of that different route. And even though it left us on a little cliffhanger, I wish that cliffhanger gave us more. And speaking of endings, I don't know, this was kind of ironic in a way, but before Sunday, like the part that ended before Sunday, there's something that happens with a completely different character on a beach. And when that character comes on the beach and finds all these people on the beach, it almost feels like Nick was spying in on my mind, because I shit you not, that moment and the end of the book, it almost feels identical to the beginning of one of my stories that I'm writing in the future. Which, to the point where if you were to read his book, Hell's Gulf, and you were to skip the last Sunday part, and then go straight into my book if I ever get to writing it, it would almost feel like it would be a sequel, because of how well it flows in. Which, I just found that to be very coincidental and ironic. But let me get back to talking about the characters, because the characters, they would have these backstories to them. They would have these very elaborate backstories about their past and about their character arcs. But what ends up happening to the characters later on in the story almost feels like it just flatlined all of that exposition, all of that progress, which made me wonder why I really cared to begin with, because there's one character that a lot of the story revolves around her, and when you get to the end point for that character, it almost feels like her character is just kind of tossed away in like one page, and you never get to go back on that, and somebody having noticed that, or somebody having talked about that character at all. Like, nobody even mentions that character. Once that thing that happens with that character happens, nobody mentions that character for the rest of the runtime. And it almost feels like, what was the point of that character? We had all this build up with that character just for this one thing to happen, and then the character's just gone from the book entirely. It just felt like a waste of a character. And speaking of that, there was another character, albeit minute, that never truly did anything wrong, never truly did anything at all, to where when something happens to this character in like the final few pages, it kind of just made me stop for a second and think, like, why that character? Like, it was so random too. It was like that character just kind of, something happened to that character, and I just sat there thinking, like, but why? we didn't get no build up, and even though they mentioned the character at least, which is better what they did with the other character, but I still wonder, like, why did that happen to him? I guess there's a point to be made that it was supposed to represent the chaos, and in pursuit of the chaos, this character fell victim, per se, but it really didn't even feel all that grand at all. I would have expected that when this happened to the character, a lot more people would have conversed about it, or, brought it up. Which brings me to my main conflict, which is the fact that the main character's journey, we never get that satisfying conclusion, because if there was more to that ending, like I said, to explore on that, we could have had a lot more between the characters' interactions to truly reflect on what the hell had happened in that third act, which is just complete mayhem. But we never do. And I sit there wondering to myself why we never got almost a proper resolution in a way. Like, one character got a resolution, another character got a very forced resolution, and then the main character and everybody else just kind of like, alright, that's it for you. End of story. And I personally just didn't get it. I kind of wish that the characters had a lot more life to them, which dialogue was another conflict I had, where the dialogue sometimes felt very forced in a way, to where I wish that the characters were speaking a lot more naturally and a lot more fluently, but you can tell when characters were just saying things because it either has to progress the story or because we have to have some kind of dialogue to fill the void, almost. And I wish that there was a little bit more development there. I'd say that the biggest piece of all that needs to have been improved upon would probably be execution and the characters, for sure. But in regards to the idea and the concept, there was a lot to have been made, for sure. There was a lot to also grasp. I think there is a lot to take in from all this. There's a lot of themes and meanings throughout the story, albeit very forced, that really do sometimes get you thinking, that really do sometimes get you care. In fact, some of the best scenes were literally like 1 or 2 pages long that have to do with just the family members, to where the family members will just have these moments of breakdown, and those are like the best scenes because you get to really explore their depth, and you really get to explore why this is so important, why this vacation is important, and why all this chaos is so much meaning to their lives and how much it's impacted their lives. And I really enjoyed that aspect. And I also really enjoy the aspect of utilizing the imagination to its fullest, because definitely when you get to that third act, it's like a fantasy dream almost. The best way I could describe this book is this: if you were watching a TV and you started to drift away and all of a sudden you start to dream, but you thought that the dream was in the movie. And then you wake up, and it's like, oh, that was that. The end. All in all, I guess the best way I would describe Hell's Gulf as a book, which I will quote it from the book itself. I mean, it was alright, but I've heard the story a million times in the past, and I knew how it was going to end. So in all honesty, it was hard to get invested. All in all, I'd probably give it 2.75 out of 5. Is that 55 out of 100? Right? That's 5.5 out of 10. Yeah, 2.75 out of 5. I'll figure out how to leave a rating on the book itself. But even though I'm not going to revisit the book, because I don't really revisit books at all, I definitely would still recommend it just for a first watch and just to see the beginnings of this writer, because the beginnings are always going to be a bit rough. They're always going to be a bit rocky. Your first book, your first story, your first movie is not going to be the best. It's not going to be the greatest. And so to see where Nick Carlson goes from here and what stories he makes going forward, I'm very interested, and I'm very intrigued how much he will improve going forward. Oh, and before I close out, I want to say two things. First thing I want to say is that I was curious, Nick. The story is written in past tense, and I don't know, but I think that the story could have been written in present tense, and it would have been a lot more effective, because the thing is that the book has like times and dates to where you have this day, and then it gets the next day, and you have these times. And if it was written in the present tense, it would almost feel like you as the audience would not know what is happening. Because when you're reading a book and it's in the past tense, it's describing to you something that has happened already, in a way. And I know that writing in present tense is a lot more difficult because you don't even realize it, but when you talk, you speak in the past tense because you're referring to things that you had just done before. So you don't really talk about the things that you're doing in the moment right now. But I think that this book, if it was written in present tense, it would have really helped with the ambition and the fear building up, because you wouldn't know what is building up. You wouldn't really understand because it's being told in the present tense. And the parts that were in the past tense would be distinguished a lot better, and I think that would have made for a lot better understanding. In general, I would love to talk more about Hell's Gulf. Nick, if you want to reach out to me, I have a business Gmail. It's in my main channel About Me page. Not this channel. This is my second channel. It's the fun channel. My main channel is Arex Mavioso. It's in the About Me of this channel. And then you go to the About Me page on that channel to see my business Gmail. And then you could shoot me an email and we could talk about Hell's Gulf. We can talk about writing improvements. We can give each other advice. Maybe if you want to, you could even hear about some of the things that I plan on writing. Maybe I could hear some of the things that you plan on writing in the future. I don't know. Just shoot me an email. I'd love to talk more about Hell's Gulf. I'd love to talk more about stuff like that. But all in all, I think that wraps up this book review. What was I just doing? Guys, what did I just do? I sat down. Okay, wait. I made a video. I'm recording right now. I did a book review. I was doing a book review, and I talked to Nick Carlson. Why do I feel like there's something missing? Hey Rex Mavioso. I'm back, baby! No!